It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign. Just listen if
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday segment of the MSD on 117.8. It's Tuesday, January 21st, and we are so happy for you joining us on this another day together with the Lord. Wow, it's already like towards the end of January, right? And it feels like this month kind of flew by. How was the start of 2025 for, everyone back at home, right? I think, for us here, it's been really exciting, right? There's been so many things going on. I will admit to being a little bit tired, but I think that's also something like it's not happening just because I'm tired, but because I need to elevate my level and my capacity for doing things once again. But because of that, I think it's very exciting and there's a lot of things being done. I think 2025, it really feels like a time, as, something was said to, American Providence and to Providence across the world. Now is the time to revive in a variety of ways and to become perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect. And, that might be like, it might seem like a big thing, but I think it fills everyone with hope as we think about it currently. And so I really hope that everyone has this exciting prospective year for 2025, and that, this first month was a great time of, giving glory to God, setting things straight, of starting the year well. Our beloved teacher has given us so much great word this month, right? About being perfect, and about today about predestination, right? It was so mind-boggling and shocking, and I'll have to message Rachel and her mom about this afterwards, because we recently taught a first half of the predestination lecture to the newcomer that was learning here. And so to have this come up in the message like this concretely, right, in terms of going through absolute predestination, relative predestination, that the predestination is the predetermination of the path, right? It's not about like what path you choose, but like if you choose to go right, then you will end up going right. If you choose to go left, then you're gonna end up going left, right? And so like if you choose to walk the path of righteousness, you're gonna go to heaven. And if you choose to walk the path of death, then you will go to hell, right? That kind of predestination. It was really great to hear this message again, because I don't know if it's for everyone, but I do feel as though maybe within these last few years, there has been more of a thinking, and this is true for myself personally, wondering like, oh, is this God's will? Is this God's will? And then kind of like sitting there like, like kind of in that kind of lull state, and not like, just going forward. But I think, the Trinity and our beloved teacher have given us this message that tells us clearly, oh, like, do things, according to what is right, according to what Jesus and the Trinity want, and that's the path that will take you to the path of heaven. And so I was really happy to hear this message again. A lot of times, right, like going back to the basics, I think is so important. And I think that's incredibly true with the word. And so shout out to a lot of people recently over this past week. We met with Ray. Thank you, Ray. It was like awesome to meet you and to have that time. And we may have some exciting new projects going on too. But as we like go through our life of faith, I know Ray, he came within these last few years, and like he's been really growing, and that's awesome. And like the longer that we're in Providence, sometimes like we're like wondering like what's next, and like we want like more, and we want to elevate our level. But a lot of the times it actually goes back to, are your foundation secure? Do you know the basics that well? Because this is the thing, right? Like God hasn't hidden the ball from us, and he's given us the truth. And oftentimes we forget the basics as we go throughout our life, and that's the thing that derails us, right? Like I think one of the new deacons at the church that I was listening to online, he was sharing that like when you err, like when you make a mistake and when you go astray, and I think something shared this in the message this week too. It's not that like you make a big mistake and then that you like go off on an incredible like derailment of where you must go, right? And more oftentimes it's that you have like a slight mistake, right? Just something that's imperfect, and that takes you in an incredibly off angle, right? It's like when you first start off, like I forgot who said this. I think my uncle actually said this in Korean. And I guess, there's like other kind of proverbs and parables similar to this, right? Like if you have an arrow that is taking off from the beginning, if two arrows are released from the same location but they're off from each other by even 1 degree, then eventually when they land, right, they'll go and they'll be like very far apart, right, even if they're just slightly off. And you can see this like when you see like archery and stuff too, right, or people who do targeting practice, right? If you're slightly off, then you'll end up like not going where you want to go. And I think with respect to that too, the hopeful way to see that is something that the Trinity have been saying since last week, that if you want to be perfect, then actually it's just doing things slightly better, right? And like the path to going to perfection is making that slight adjustment, right? And so tying all that back, it's about going back to the basics and perfecting the basics. And sometimes I think all of us have a tendency to be like, oh my gosh, like we gotta do this all over again, like. And I think that takes on like different forms, right? Like sometimes they're like, oh my gosh, like you think that the basics involve like re-listening to the same 30 principles that you listened to before, or like setting the same basic conditions you did before. And even if it's not like spiritual things, like even if it's about exercise, you're like, oh my gosh, it's exercising the same exact way I did before. But actually, like when you go and you take action, you'll find out that it's different, right? And there's a new and a better way to do it, right? I think like for all of us, this predestination lesson and the stories that we've heard, like, something sharing about this, it's not like new per se, but I'm sure that there was a feeling and a sense of newness from listening to it. And if you guys didn't feel that way on Sunday, hopefully by listening to this again and by thinking about the word this week, by reviewing it again and reviewing it with other people, right? If that's something that you can do, like going over the word, having QT with yourself or with others, like that sense of newness will come. Right, and that you'll find a way, because I definitely feel that as well, right? And I think a related thing is like even reading the Bible, right? I've heard from quite a lot of people, and you guys are more than welcome to join in on this, right? No one's barring you from doing this, right? I've heard from more than one people that they want to do a Bible read through, a Bible reading challenge in 2025, and I think people are excited about that, and I am too. And sometimes like if you've done like a Bible reading thing before, you might slip up and it might take you some time, and like towards the end of the year you'll realize that you didn't finish, right, if that was your intention, but at least you read a good amount, right, within the year, right? But it's the Bible, right? And like when you think about starting from Genesis again, like it might kind of like make you think like, oh my gosh, like I'm going back to Genesis once again, I gotta go to Numbers once again, right? Stuff like that. But right now, like as we started this Bible read through, I'm currently, I think I'm on like Exodus like 12 or 13, like right as the Passover is happening, right as like Pharaoh like and the firstborn of Israel, of Egypt, are all being judged, and like Israel is finally getting to leave after all of these judgments. And it's different. It feels different reading it once again. And I know like just as with any good book, right? Of course, the Bible, we don't just read it to as a book, but as with anything, when you do it again, like you kind of see things that you didn't the times before. And it's been a long time since you've seen it too. So going back to the basics, it helps you in many great ways. And so I hope whether it's Bible reading, whether it's like reviewing and relearning the 30 principles, or putting yourself in a position where learning the fundamentals of the word is something that you're going to do again, or evangelizing, right? That was something that was said in the church announcements I was listening to, right? If you take back yourself to your roots, right? If that's something that you did, some part of your foundation that is part of your core, and like we haven't been doing it, in 2025, hopefully we revive in that sense and go back to the fundamentals, go back to the basics, and revive our hearts. Yeah, and so I hope you guys have an exciting time, right? Like I might have shared before, but in my current Bible read through, I'm actually reading it in English and Korean at the same time. So I like kind of read through the passage, the English passage in my head, and then I'll read aloud the Korean passage because my Korean isn't as good. And it's like old Korean, right? Like just as like a lot of the Bibles are in like old English, like it's old Korean, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so confusing. But I'm hoping that through this process that my Korean will improve too. And along with that, it's enjoyable actually because there are some word choices in Korean. I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. Like I didn't know that they would use that word for this passage that we read in English, right? And so it's very, very interesting. And I think there's actually some things from viewing that, like that I really feel like that God prepared, like that God prepared English and that He prepared Korean too, right? Like I do think that there are some like fundamental, foundational things that God put, right? Like as we talked about with predestination too, right, into Korean so that like the man and mission of this time period would come from this nation, right, using this language. And so I'm grateful for the Trinity for that too. And I'm sure that English will have a place, right? Like it's the language where the gospel has spread into so many different countries in the world, right, including Korea too. And so like I think English really has. It's not to say that it's like served this purpose and done everything it can, but it continues to be a very important thing. And so yeah, in that way, right, there's a way to also like see what the same thing that you looked at before, right, from me reading the Bible in Korean and English in the sense that you may be able to gain something at a higher level too. And so we'll wrap up for this first introduction section, right? I hope that everyone has this great time of starting this year off well. And let's go into our first music break for today.
See the birds gathering in, creatures great and small, come here to rest, my beautiful one, young dawn. We realized we rejoice as we gaze at the land, seeing its forms wondrous and grand. Even today, as we sing the new songs, we are filled with hope. In that land, clouds go to rest, gentle winds linger a while. Wamyeongdong is wonderful. All the earth cries out in praise at the word of the Lord. Powerful words of the new times. Even today, as we sing the new songs, we are filled with hope. This is God's history. By His love raptured us. This is God's history. Glorious, it will last eternally. This is God's history. By His love raptured us. This is God's history. Glorious, it will last eternally.
Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that break. And for like our main topic for Bible today, this is something that I was thinking about, especially while listening to the message this week, and kind of going back to the fundamentals. and working with Ray and also with Rachel on this Providence apologetics thing, amongst other things. What it made me think of was like the portion of this week's message where something was talking about where people go astray, right? And he talks about he goes back to the first being, right, to ever do so, and it was with Lucifer, right? And he went through the story about why it is that Lucifer fell, right? And so actually, in going back to the Providence apologetics thing and looking at 2023, it's not a surprise, what happened to the people at that time, and the people who have fallen away since, right? And it's the exact same process as Lucifer. And sometime in some ways the problems may have started small, and in some ways the problems may have been big, but it may have come from a place of I don't know why something is doing this. I don't know why Jesus is doing this. I don't know why God is doing this, right? Going back to different people at different times. And I think that example from the fall and from Lucifer, it's very enlightening. Right, and so there's two things relate kind of similar and related to that from this week's message that also came up in when God said that the path of death and hell. Well, I guess hell wasn't really included in this exactly, but the path of death isn't something that God created. Right, it was something that was made that as these angels and these heavenly beings were leaving God. This place, this place filled with death, it formed because of that. And I think that, thinking about it like that is so shocking and it's so true, right? It's not that God predestined, this path away from him, right? But that as the people who should be next to him are leaving, we are making this place full of death, and that as soon as other people come in there, they get ensnared in this death by Satans and demons, and even just by themselves, right? By the darkness that lives within that area, within that path. For a lot of these people, it all starts from a place of thinking oh, what is the Trinity doing? Oh, how come Providence is like this? Oh, because all of those kind of complaints, it's like with Lucifer when he was thinking about how come God is trying to make human beings and do this and fulfill his purpose in this way? God shouldn't do that, right? And kind of putting their thoughts over God's thoughts. And I bring this up because I thought this part was very important for me too, because I'll be honest, I think especially within this last year, right? And I've talked to many people about this too, but I am speaking from my own position and perspective, right? Because I wanted some things done relatively quickly, and I thought that they were important. I remember thinking even in this in the late half of last year and this year, thinking oh my gosh, I wish we could have this, I wish we could have that. And it was even to the point that when I was writing down a letter to Sungmin, I wanted to talk to him about so many different things. But the message came up saying to love the Lord from your perspective and from your position, right? And the love that God gives you at your level, that's even more than you can handle already. And I haven't yet gone back to review the message, but I think it's so true. Because he does so much for us, and the love that he gives to us and that we've received, from the time that we were in Providence, and that the time that we started listening to the word and changing and having, this fundamental purpose of creation fulfilled, and going to and getting on that path to the golden city of heaven, and leaving this path of death and of suffering, and achieving the golden city of heaven. All of these things are loves and are things that we can't imagine fulfilling on our own, and it's so much bigger, right? Then there's nothing that we need to be disappointed by. It's like with Lucifer, he had nothing that he should have been butthurt or disappointed towards God about. And it's the same for us, and I think it's the same for many people in Providence, right? And I think in the West, by virtue of our connection, in some ways, we may be a bit sheltered at times from the things going on, in different countries and in Korea in particular. And I think, like sometimes when we hear that, like as Westerners, like we might be like off put, like because people do say that. And I don't bring it up to be like, oh, there's so much we don't know, right? Because we're not in Korea, and because yeah, we don't see what's going on, right? It's nothing like that. But like I think the point I'm trying to emphasize is that there are a lot of cases, like throughout Providence history, many times where people question, what the man in mission does, and they say like, oh, like, and by doing that, right, it's not just criticizing something else. It's saying that you believe that your thoughts are better than the Trinity's and better than what something is doing. And oftentimes it's like so imperfect because there's some things that the Trinity are doing that they know that you don't know. Right? And so we're speaking from our limited perspective, just like as Lucifer and just as with all of the angels that fell, and trying to say that we know better than the Trinity. And I want to highlight that also because even in the West and all across the world, we can engage in that as well, and we can be that principal who does that. And I reflect back on myself and like wanting to do so many things, like just I guess for as the examples, right? I wanted to make have something's books translated, and come up with written works for Providence, and do different things with the second generation and with the SS. And I'll be honest, like over these last few years, many of those things have been getting fulfilled. And with evangelism and things too, we hope to make ministry happen in great ways. And a lot of these things have been happening in great ways. But there have been times where I have looked at it and be like, oh, like, why couldn't we do this, right? But I think every time that I thought that way, I had this like feeling, like kind of inspiration in the back of my head, like thinking like that, oh, like this is my own thinking, right? And I can kind of like feel it, like deep down in my thoughts and like maybe deep down in my heart. And I wanted to highlight that in case for anyone, right, who may think along those lines, right, and just kind of opening up myself and sharing that, right, like, oh yeah, you may feel that way too. But I think that this week's message was very clarifying in that, and I wanted to take the time to lay out what this message said, right? And it was like, love God from your position, right? Because the biggest thing that I see is that actually our position is really, really big, like for each of us, right? Our position before heaven and the love that we exchange with the Trinity, like at our level and our position, it's huge. Right? And so there's like, even if we were to handle just the tasks that we already have, that we know the Trinity have entrusted to us, even that in and of itself would be really big. And like, it's like how the Trinity receives that love from us too. Right? And so sometimes I think, for me personally, I wanted to do this and that and all of these different things for heaven. But like, even if I think about the missions that I do have, right, with respect to the SS, and now like in some sense helping out with the male second generation, as well as like studying here in law school and evangelism, all of these things. These are huge things that I really should really do well, and like by doing well that I can be thankful for. And so that's something, right? It's like, it's not that I was like devaluing those things, but like when I was thinking about like, oh, like, why aren't these books translated? Ah, like, why can't we raise second generation in this way, right? Versus that way. Like, oh, like for the SS, do we got to do this instead of that, right? Like all of these things were coming to my mind over, I would say, probably the better part of last year. And I think it's something that, I want to repent to the Trinity about too, right? Because I don't want to do things and raise people according to my own thoughts and become like Lucifer, right? In that way. And there's something related to that. I think this is like an English saying, right? That the path to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think that's kind of like a more positive way of saying what the message was saying. And so it's not completely accurate, but in a way it's true, right? Because the way to hell, like the path to death, is wide and is comfortable, right? And so there's people there who go in that direction who, like, in some way, like in a subjective way, their thoughts and what they were feeling may seem like it was like for a good purpose, for a good will. Maybe, yeah, like I'm sure like with Lucifer, like he thought, right, in his subjective way, that what he thought was, what he was doing, what he thought was good. And the message talked about that too, right? Like the people who do evil and the Satans and the fallen angels who do evil, they think that that is good, right? They do it because they believe that that is good. And I think for us too, I wanted to bring this up because I like in Providence, by and large, we are doing great, right? And I think that's actually a big component of this week's message too. We are doing great. Like, do not doubt that what we're doing is good. But at the same time, like as like doing a little bit more makes us perfect. Like going off in a slightly direction, that's what starts to take us off the path that we know is predestined to be good, that is predestined to be alive. And so I hope that everyone can have this reflection because as something we said, and this will kind of be the final portion for Bible today, but this is the portion, like this is the thing that will take us back. Right? Like something you said in the message, that as soon as you change in your thoughts, as soon as you get out and you leave that path, you will be on the path of life. And I think that's so tremendous, right? So all of us, every single day, we may err in some way, right? Like as a tree grows, right? Like you might have offshoots, right? You may have branches that are growing in unkempt ways, but all it takes is to snip off that branch so that our form will be shown and that we will be perfectly made. And so, yeah, I hope that everyone is able to do that this year. I hope that you guys like my candidness towards the end for this section. But I was very grateful for this message, and I think it's something to be applied by everyone. And, I really valued this lesson, right? Like, and when I think about second generation or SS or newcomers and, even all members, right? I think, right, I was so grateful because us realizing the value makes us realize the value of what it is that we're giving to these lives that we're teaching and managing. We're like, wow, like this is so great. And so it makes us value it more deeply and understand what it is that the Trinity are giving to these lives. And even more so what they've given to us as well. And so, yeah, I was so thankful for this. I can't wait to see where the Word takes us in 2025. Let's really elevate our level and do things perfectly by doing things just a little bit better than what we've been doing before. And, like if we've gone on the path of death, towards death in some way, right, in some version of our thoughts, maybe we get out of that and realize, oh, okay, like we've actually been given a tremendous opportunity within the things that we have, and be joyful and jubilant and restore that relationship with the Trinity. I hope everyone has a great week with regards to that. And so we'll have our second break for today, and then we'll hand things off to Rachel for 2G Talks.
The truth shines forevermore. Every day I lived my life loving the Lord. We fulfilled rapture through love. I'll live with Him forever. God fulfilled His great purpose for the earth. This new history, this is where hope and joy shine so bright. great purpose for the earth, this new history. This is where hope and joy shine so bright. I will live here in Providence, serving the Spirit and the Son, always loving them. Now this history is my own, since our love is eternal. I will live here evermore in the Lord's embrace. Since our love is eternal, I will live here evermore in the Lord's embrace.
Welcome back, everyone, to 2G Talks. Rachel here. 2G Talks is the segment I hope to create a narrative and conversation around Second Gen's experience in Providence, while also discussing other topics related to Second Gen, all centered only on the Lord. For today's 2G Talks, I would like to give an update on evangelism and some things to look forward to in the future for our Second Gen department in American Providence. Hey y'all, I hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday here in Texas. I don't know if you know or have heard on the news, but we're actually going to be having a freeze taking place, I believe in the southeast portion of the state. The last time that this happened, a giant kind of winter storm like this was in 2021, I want to say, in February. It was so bad that due to the cold, wind, and snow, actually the entire power grid in Texas failed. So this left millions of people in the state without power for weeks. Thankfully, it seems that this time our government, local and state government, seems to be more prepared. Even driving to service today, because for me it's a Sunday, right? I actually saw all these plow trucks going by, and I did see trucks with these giant tanks full of brine or the salt water, right? And I could see that they were driving downtown and like setting things up and kind of preparing. But yeah, it was pretty incredible to watch them. So please, I ask for y'all's incredibly strong and powerful prayers for all the families that are here, as well as the churches that are here in Texas. Because again, we don't want to lose power. Last time, my family and we did lose power. And so, when you lose power, for example, something like your fridge doesn't work anymore. And last time in 2021, it was actually colder outside, believe it or not, than it was inside. So we had to take all of our food out of the fridge and stick it in the snow outside. So really hope we don't have to do that again, because I hate the cold. It's, I think, my greatest enemy. But we are prepared here just in case, so no worries. Anyways, another thing, today is kind of a special day. It's not really, but it is my 20th 2G Talks ever. So I started in September, I believe, and I'm doing it since then, and it's been about 20 times since I've been doing the 2G Talks. I actually wasn't really keeping track or counting, but when I started preparing to record for this segment, I decided, let me see how many times I did this. And so, yeah, it's been 20 weeks of me doing 2G Talks, which is so incredible and amazing. I really am grateful for being given this opportunity by the Holy Trinity through this channel of MSD to share my story, and hopefully through my testimony, reach out to other second gen, in the present and in the future, as well as reaching out to all of you all and other Providence members. And I really just want to thank you guys for always listening in every week and always commenting. It's one of my favorite things to do. I enjoy looking back on the comments, even kind of months prior. I'll just check to see if anyone's left a new comment, to see the community that we've all kind of created and fostered together. And I'm so happy to see that it is really growing. For example, I'm sure y'all have seen Ray Lim's comments in many of the MSD podcasts, not just on Tuesdays. And I don't know if Eddie's already covered this. I feel like he would cover this. But yes, a big shout out and thanks to Ray, because last week, if you saw, he commented about wanting to begin a Providence apologetics, which I had never really heard of. Growing up as a second gen, I know in Christianity they have something called apologetics, which is essentially like a questions and reflections, answers kind of file or something on topics that either newcomers or second gens may have regarding those more difficult or controversial topics. But of course, even for more simple questions, things that we may perhaps forget over time. So yes, with Ray's great initiative, we've actually started this really intensive and long marathon of a project to begin accumulating this information so that we can have our own Providence apologetics. And we're going to be gathering, of course, reflections, so our own input. But the most important thing is that we are actually taking it from the man of mission himself, who has the answers, right? So we're taking the answers and information from the Sunday, from the Wednesday messages and 30 lessons. And we're even, just like another commenter, I think it was the KS3167. I hope I'm stating that correctly, but they suggested that we take from Pastor Sky's Q&A segment that he does every Thursday. So we will be doing that as well to begin this process of the creation of the Providence apologetics. So if anyone listening is interested, if Eddie mentioned it, please feel free in reaching out to us and joining. The more hands, the better, right? That's what we want to do. We want to make sure we stay consistent and that we do this for this history so that we can leave a record of this. Now, that was kind of my intro. Just like I mentioned prior, before the little music break, I do have a few key things that I wanted to cover, right? Evangelism updates as well as second gen updates in American Providence. So first, evangelism. Let's talk about it. In Houston, we have actually had a sudden shift in evangelism. Recently, we had a booth on one of the college campuses here last week on Tuesday. And then that following Thursday, there was a group Bible study with about 7 newcomers that all came from the booth. And so far, every single one of those newcomers are either looking to continue the Bible study in a group format or starting one-on-one. And I mean, this is just really incredible because I'm sure for a lot of the perhaps smaller churches, that ever since COVID and 2023 and all of that, all those things happened, it's been really difficult to evangelize. Those evangelism efforts had been a lot smaller, specifically in Houston. I want to say maybe we were getting one person a year to evangelize or pass. So for us, it's a really big deal because we're having 7 times that. And I mean, it was incredible. The booth that we were having, when we had the booth in the past, usually we would have to go out to people and talk to them and kind of bring them to the booth, almost convince them in a sense and try and talk about God. But this time the booth was so completely different. I heard it from a couple of people who were physically there attending. I was unable to attend, but they were talking about how people were just going right up to them and asking about what this ministry was, asking about what Bible studies were being offered. I mean, it was a complete shift from us going to people and trying to catch the fish in the lives to practically the fish just jumping into the boat. They're all just jumping into our boat and really invested. And our ministry team that was there on the ground during the booth spent 9 hours outside. And I told you guys that there's a freeze coming. Well, it's been cold ever since. So we had so many people outside in the cold, like 40-degree weather, for 9 hours, dancing and singing, even praying with some of the people, the newcomers that came up to the booth. And they collected, I want to say, a total of 26 sign-ups. And like I said, out of those, we actually did have about 7 newcomers come. So, I mean, and there's so many other stories. There's a story where one of the girls that was connected to the booth went to the group Bible study, but she also invited another girl who didn't go to the booth. She just told her that she should go. Turns out this second girl who was invited, right, didn't show up to the booth, is actually related to one of our members. Who's a part of our ministry in our club on campus. It was so crazy. Yeah, so when this newcomer showed up to the group Bible study and our member, they saw each other and they were like, oh my gosh, we know each other. So they had seen each other at past like family events. I think during Thanksgiving or Christmas they had seen each other. And the member actually, she testified today at service that when she saw this family member of hers, I'm just going to say the cousin, when she saw this cousin of hers, she did have that initial inspiration to evangelize her. But she thought, it's kind of weird, we're at a Thanksgiving, it's a family event, I shouldn't do that. But, if God has a will, there's a way, because God brought this cousin through one of the girls who was connected at the booth. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, so, I mean, of course, this is not only because of our condition or us just going to the campus and doing the booth, right? Our church here in Houston actually set a really long and intense prayer condition. I want to say over 40 days prayer condition with the whole church, 3 times a day praying. And so I do truly believe that through that prayer condition and through the condition of the man of mission, right? Sunsenim has truly set that condition. And the theme of this year, the word and evangelism. So I truly do believe that through Sunsenim's condition, through him putting his life on the line again and really bearing the cross again, God is opening the doors to save the people who he really wants to save. So, yeah, it was just so amazing and so moving. So please pray for us with evangelism. Sunsenim always says that evangelism is the answer. And it's true. It's the answer to everything. It really does solve everything. I'm currently managing and helping to evangelize 2 girls here in Houston as well. And when you evangelize someone, and this doesn't have to be passing, right? Just the process of going through evangelism and managing someone, even not a newcomer, even a second gen, it's very difficult. It's very difficult because you are pushed to face certain parts of yourselves that you need to fix, or things that you never noticed. I think of the Sunday message, the scriptures, right? Where someone was talking about how can you see the plank, how can you not see the plank in your own eye, but talk about the speck in your brother's eye? So through evangelism myself and helping to manage other people, I've really been pushed to change myself, to really focus on the not great qualities that I have and really try to change them and fix them for the better, not just for the newcomer's sake, but also for my sake and for this history's sake. And so because of that, right, not only do you get to learn more about yourself, but you do get to learn more about the condition that Sunsenim sent, how this history was made, how God really is here on the earth in complete control of everything. Everything that is done on the earth is done according to God's will. And you really get to see that and feel it in reality whenever you're out evangelizing and trying to manage people, right? Showing them that God does exist and testifying for this history. Naturally, you take ownership of it and it begins to feel even more real. And that's why I think it's so important for everyone to evangelize, not only just everyone, but especially for second gen. I think we've talked about it a little bit before, that second gen may not really be able to easily feel this history in a real way or really able to take ownership of this history. But I do feel that through evangelism, second gen will be able to gain this sense of reality. Of course, like I said, we all know evangelism is really difficult, and it's very likely that second gen do not want to evangelize a stranger or their friends or anything like that. But this kind of goes into my second big announcement or topic that I wanted to talk about regarding our second gen American department that we have here. The last retreat that we had was focused on just everyone. So we attempted to do our best in balancing the physical and the spiritual aspects of Providence life, making it really fun, but also really deep and inspirational. We are now planning for our next retreat. Don't know when, don't know where, so don't ask. But we are planning to have this next retreat so that we can focus on and start cultivating this sense of ownership for second gen in Providence. Now, there's a couple of ideas floating around on different things that we want to do, but we are planning on making the second gen retreat a spirituality camp in this way. Because, like I said, second gen, for example, with evangelism, may not always want to go out to campus or care to go out or have the time. Maybe they're in school, working, whatever it may be, right? But if we're able to set this time apart specifically for them to really get to feel, take ownership, actually take action according to the word, then through this camp, through this process, then they can actually realize it for themselves. How incredible this history is, how God is truly living and working within their lives. So, again, I don't know when this is going to be, but I'm really looking forward to it. Our head rep for the second gen department, I believe she grew up in Korea, and they had these spirituality camps where people would have to set spiritual conditions to even go to the camps, right? You have to wake up this many times for pre-dawn, you have to read this many chapters a day, pray this amount, type of thing, so that you could even go. And then when they went to the spirituality camps, she said that they would hear so many lessons from Sunsanim, testimonies about Sunsanim, how people had those really amazing, incredible personal stories with him, and that through those stories they were able to see how Sunsanim really truly loves, and that through those stories they were able to really see how the history of Providence was created and made, not just on doctrine, but on love, because God is love, right? So we are hoping and workshopping and really thinking of a lot of different things and activities for the second gen to not just have a hypothetical sense of this history, of God, of faith, but we really want to help them cultivate what it really means to live a life of the complete Testament history and to live a life of a bride. So I think it's okay that I shared this with you guys. It's going to be announced anyways, but y'all will be the first to hear it, kind of officially, unofficially. So yes, please pray for us second gen leaders here in America as we really try and take care of course, the second gen that are struggling, that are still trying to find their way, that are frozen vegetables, who still need to be thawed by the Holy Spirit. And also we're going to also help to focus and work on those second gen that are fresh vegetables, who are ready to be cooked by the Holy Spirit's word and inspiration and fire, and really become the next generation of leaders. So with that, I'll wrap up today's 2G Talks. I hope you enjoyed our wonderful Tuesday segment together. Again, please pray for me and my family so that we still can have power throughout this cold winter freeze. But as always, please feel free to leave a comment or shoot Eddie and I an email at 2gtalks@gmail.com. Don't forget to hit that like button, and I hope you'll have a great rest of your Tuesday together with the Lord. I'll see y'all next week.
Can't stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the morning star drive, you know. I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know.